Officer Caldwell, the woman said quietly, watching the final second disappear from the wall clock, you didn't throw away my authority, you activated it. The digital display changed from 8 hours 41 minutes and 29 seconds to 8 hours 41 minutes and 30 seconds. Every exit inside the Richmond Central Precinct locked at once. The sound came in a violent sequence. Click. 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 Heavy steel bolts slid into place behind the front doors, the rear evidence entrance, the underground garage, and every emergency stairwell in the building. The fluorescent lights above the main desk flickered twice before turning a deep warning red. Conversations died. Phones stopped ringing. For one breathless moment, nobody moved. Officer Ethan Caldwell stood beside the booking counter with one hand resting near his belt. The confidence that had filled his face only seconds earlier began to crack. "What did you do?" he demanded. Across from him, Maya Brooks remained seated in a cold metal chair, her wrists secured in front of her. She did not pull against the cuffs. She did not raise her voice. She simply looked toward the black plastic trash can near Caldwell's desk. Her federal badge lay inside it beneath a crushed coffee cup and several torn arrest forms. 90 seconds earlier, Caldwell had held that badge between two fingers as if it were something filthy. He had laughed at the gold seal. He had mocked the identification card. Then, in front of 6 officers and 2 frightened civilians, he had dropped it into the trash. Now the precinct's security monitors flashed with the same message in bold white letters, Federal Evidence Preservation Protocol active. No personnel may exit. Caldwell read the warning twice. His jaw tightened. Turn it off. Maya slowly lifted her eyes to meet his. I can't. The calmness in her voice disturbed him more than anger would have. At the far end of the room, a young patrol officer named Daniel Reed stepped away from his computer. His face had gone pale. Sir, Daniel said, staring at the monitor, the system isn't responding to local commands. Caldwell turned sharply. Then override it. I already tried. Try again. Daniel's fingers moved across the keyboard, but the screen rejected every code. He entered. A low alarm began pulsing through the building, not loud, but steady, like a second heartbeat beneath the silence. Then another message appeared. External federal access established. The officers exchanged uneasy glances. Only Maya remained still. Imagine standing in that room. Imagine watching a man who had carried himself like the law suddenly realize that the law had been watching him. Caldwell marched toward Maya, his boots striking the tile with increasing force. You walked into my station with fake credentials, he said. You caused a security breach, and now you're going to tell me exactly how to stop it. Maya studied him carefully. Not with fear. With recognition. She had seen men like Ethan Caldwell before, men who mistook silence for weakness and authority for ownership. Men who believed a badge gave them permission to decide who belonged in a room and who did not. But Caldwell still did not understand why she had come. He did not know that 3 months of altered arrest reports had led federal investigators directly to this precinct. He did not know that evidence had vanished after being logged under his supervision. And he certainly did not know that Maya Brooks had entered the building that morning expecting someone to reveal himself. She just had not expected him to do it so quickly. Behind Caldwell, Daniel Reed glanced toward the trash can. His eyes widened. Then he moved. Not toward the locked doors. Toward Maya's discarded badge. She noticed. So did the ceiling camera turning silently above them. Maya leaned back in the chair as the alarm continued its measured pulse. Officer Caldwell, she said, tell him not to touch it. Caldwell looked over his shoulder. Daniel froze with his hand inches above the trash. And somewhere beyond the locked walls, vehicles were already surrounding the precinct. Dark windows. Federal plates. No sirens. Because the people arriving did not need to announce their authority. The building had already done it for them. 20 minutes earlier, Richmond Central Precinct looked ordinary. Rain tapped against the narrow windows. Fluorescent lights hummed above rows of metal desks. Officers moved between ringing phones, unfinished coffee, and stacks of reports that seemed to grow faster than anyone could file them. Maya Brooks entered through the front doors at 8:29 a.m. She wore a charcoal coat over a dark blue blouse, simple black trousers, and low heels polished enough to reflect the pale lobby lights. Nothing about her appearance demanded attention, yet several heads turned the moment she crossed the floor. Some looked curious. Others looked suspicious. Maya noticed every glance, but acknowledged none of them. She had spent 12 years learning how to enter hostile rooms without allowing the room to enter her. Her posture remained straight. Her breathing remained measured. Beneath her coat, a small recorder captured every voice around her. At the reception desk, Officer Daniel Reed looked up. "Can I help you, ma'am?" "I'm here to meet Sergeant Thomas Vale," Maya replied. "He's expecting me." The name changed Daniel's expression. Only slightly. But Maya saw it. His fingers stopped above the keyboard. His eyes shifted toward the hallway leading to evidence storage before returning to her face. "Sergeant Vale isn't on duty. He told me to arrive at 8:30. Daniel swallowed. "Then he gave you the wrong information." Before Maya could answer, a heavier voice came from behind her. "What's this about?" Officer Ethan Caldwell approached with the slow confidence of a man accustomed to others stepping aside. He was tall, broad-shouldered, and perfectly uniformed, but his expression carried something colder than professionalism. His eyes moved over Maya's clothes, her handbag, and finally her face. "She says she's meeting Vale," Daniel explained. Caldwell gave a humorless smile. "People don't just walk into my precinct asking for officers." Maya turned toward him. "I gave the front desk a name and a scheduled time. You gave him a story." The room seemed to quiet around them. Maya reached carefully inside her coat. Several officers stiffened. She withdrew a leather credential case and opened it. The gold federal seal caught the light. Caldwell stared at it for 1 second. Then he laughed. "Where did you buy that?" Maya's voice remained calm. "Verify the identification number." He took the case from her hand, barely looking at the photograph. "You expect me to believe you're federal? I expect you to follow procedure." That sentence changed him. His smile vanished. Around them, officers pretended to work while listening to every word. Caldwell stepped closer. "This is my building," he said. Maya held his gaze. "No, Officer Caldwell. It belongs to the public." For a moment, neither moved. Then Caldwell snapped the case shut. And the first mistake of his final 90 seconds began. The credential case had never been ordinary. To Ethan Caldwell, it looked like a piece of leather wrapped around a gold seal and a photograph he had already decided not to believe. To Maya Brooks, it was a lifeline, a witness, and a silent alarm designed for the exact moment when procedure failed. The badge was linked to a federal security network. If the case remained open, it functioned like identification. If it was forcibly closed, separated from Maya, or placed beyond its authorized range, a 90-second verification window began. Most agents never needed that feature. Maya had hoped she would not need it either. She had entered Richmond Central Precinct under strict instructions: meet Sergeant Thomas Vale, receive copies of altered evidence logs, and leave without exposing the investigation. Vale had spent 6 months feeding information to the Department of Justice from inside the station. Missing body camera files. Rewritten arrest reports. Cash seized but never recorded. Complaints against certain officers that disappeared before reaching internal affairs. Every trail led back to the same building. And several led to Ethan Caldwell. Maya had memorized his file before walking through the front doors. 15 years in uniform. 3 excessive force complaints. 2 witnesses who later withdrew their statements. A disciplinary hearing that vanished after a deputy chief intervened. On paper, Caldwell was experienced. In reality, he was protected. That was why Maya had come alone. A visible federal team would have frightened the suspects into silence. A quiet meeting with Vale might have delivered the evidence without alerting anyone. But Vale was missing. Daniel Reed was nervous. And Caldwell had reacted to her badge with anger before he had even examined it. Those details mattered. Maya watched him turn the credential case over in his hand. "Federal agent," he said, loud enough for the room to hear. "That's a good one." A few officers smiled uneasily. Maya did not. "Run the number," she repeated. Caldwell stepped closer. "You don't give orders here." His voice was controlled, but something behind his eyes was not. Fear rarely arrived looking like fear. Sometimes it wore arrogance. Sometimes it raised its voice. Sometimes it destroyed the very thing that could expose it. Maya glanced toward the hallway where Vale was supposed to appear. Empty. Then toward Daniel. He looked away too quickly. The recorder beneath her coat captured everything. Caldwell opened a desk drawer, removed a pair of handcuffs, and placed them on the counter between them. "You're going to tell me who sent you," he said. Maya looked at the cuffs, then at the badge in his hand. "You should verify that first." He smiled. Then he walked toward the trash can. And somewhere inside the credential case, the countdown prepared to begin. "You know what your problem is?" Caldwell asked, holding Maya's badge above the trash. "You walked in here expecting everyone to believe you." Maya's expression did not change. "I walked in expecting you to verify it." A few officers lowered their eyes. Caldwell noticed. His face hardened. He had built his authority on moments like this: small rooms, silent witnesses, and people too uncertain to challenge the uniform standing in front of them. The badge on his chest had become more than identification. To him, it was permission. Permission to interrupt. Permission to accuse. Permission to decide whose voice deserved to be heard. He looked at Maya and saw no fear. That offended him most. "You people always think a confident voice changes the facts," he said. The word settled over the room like smoke. No one asked who he meant by "you people." They already knew. Maya felt the familiar pressure behind her ribs, the old anger that came from being judged before being questioned. She had felt it in elevators, courtrooms, airports, and government buildings where her credentials were examined twice while others passed without notice. But anger was not the mission. Evidence was. So she remained still. "Officer Caldwell," she said, "this is your final opportunity to follow procedure." He laughed again, louder this time. "My final opportunity?" He turned toward the surrounding desks, inviting the room to share his amusement. "Did everyone hear that? She walks into our station with a costume badge and starts threatening officers. I did not threaten you. You implied consequences. Consequences are not threats when they follow policy." The room went silent. Caldwell stepped closer until the edge of her badge nearly touched her shoulder. "Tell me where you stole this." "I didn't." "Tell me who made it." "The United States government." His eyes narrowed. Then, without warning, he dropped the credential case into the trash. It struck the bottom with a dull plastic crack. Maya heard something softer beneath it. A single electronic chirp. The countdown had started. 90 seconds. Caldwell grabbed her wrist and pulled her toward the booking counter. "Cuff her." Daniel Reed hesitated. "Sir, maybe we should verify." "Cuff her." Daniel looked at Maya. For 1 second, guilt crossed his face. Then he reached for the handcuffs. Maya offered her hands without resistance. The metal closed around her wrists. Click. 81 seconds. Caldwell took her phone, placed it on the desk, and smiled as though the room belonged to him again. He did not see Maya glance at the wall clock. He did not notice Daniel watching the trash. And he did not hear the federal system quietly confirming that an authorized agent had been separated from her badge inside a compromised police facility. 74 seconds remained. The trap was no longer waiting. It was awake. 68 seconds remained. Maya sat beneath the red glow of the security camera, listening to the precinct breathe around her. Paper shifted. A chair scraped. Somewhere behind the booking desk, a printer continued feeding out reports as if nothing had changed. Caldwell placed her phone beside his keyboard. "Who is Thomas Vale?" he asked. "You said he wasn't here." "I asked who he is to you." Maya looked toward the evidence hallway. Someone who understood that missing records eventually leave a pattern. Daniel Reed's face tightened. Caldwell noticed. "What pattern?" Maya remained silent. For months, federal analysts had compared arrest logs with evidence room entries from Richmond Central. The numbers never aligned. Confiscated cash appeared in one report and vanished in another. Body camera files were marked corrupted only when certain officers were involved. Complaints were assigned case numbers, then quietly deleted before review. At first, the discrepancies seemed administrative. Then 3 witnesses disappeared. One moved without notice. One withdrew a statement after receiving an unexplained payment. The third, a young public defender named Rachel Simmons, was found unconscious beside her car after requesting footage connected to Caldwell's unit. She survived. And she remembered the officer who had warned her to stop asking questions. Thomas Vale had supplied the name. Ethan Caldwell. Maya shifted her cuffed hands slightly. Beneath the sleeve of her coat, the recorder continued collecting every word. 52 seconds. Caldwell leaned closer. "You came here looking for files. I came here for the truth. You came into the wrong building." "No," Maya said. "I came into the exact one." The word struck something inside him. His eyes moved toward the evidence hallway. Only for a moment. But the camera saw it. So did Maya. Daniel took a slow step backward from the desk. His gaze drifted again toward the trash can, where the federal badge lay beneath crumpled paper. Sweat gathered near his hairline despite the cold room. Maya understood then. Daniel was not merely nervous. He was waiting for something. Or protecting someone. 39 seconds. A door opened at the far end of the hall. Lieutenant Robert Hayes emerged carrying a sealed cardboard box stamped for destruction. He stopped when he saw Maya in handcuffs. Then he saw the badge in the trash. The box nearly slipped from his hands. Caldwell turned. "Take that downstairs." Hayes did not move. Maya studied the label. Evidence Archive 14B. The same archive number Thomas Vale had sent in his final encrypted message. 27 seconds. Maya raised her eyes to Caldwell. "You should ask him what's inside." Caldwell's face went still. And in that stillness, she found the answer. The missing reports were not gone. They were 10 yards away. Waiting to burn. 24 seconds remained. Lieutenant Hayes tightened his grip on the box. "Take it downstairs," Caldwell repeated. This time, his voice carried no authority. Only fear. Hayes looked toward the rear corridor, then toward Daniel Reed. Something passed silently between them, a warning, perhaps, or an agreement already made long before Maya entered the building. Maya saw it. The camera saw it too. 18 seconds. Daniel moved first. He stepped toward the trash can, pretending to reach for a fallen report, but his hand angled toward Maya's credential case. "Don't touch it," Maya said. Caldwell spun around. "Why?" Daniel froze. For the first time, everyone in the room looked directly at the badge. Not at Maya. At the thing Caldwell had discarded. A tiny green light pulsed beneath the crushed paper. Once. Twice. Caldwell's face drained of color. What is that? Maya lifted her cuffed hands slightly. Verification. 12 seconds. Hayes suddenly turned toward the evidence hallway. He ran. The cardboard box struck his leg as he moved, nearly tearing from his hands. Caldwell shouted after him, but Hayes did not stop. Daniel reached for the badge again. Then the building's network screens went black. Every monitor. Every desk terminal. Every camera display. Silence swallowed the room. 7 seconds. White letters appeared across the central screen. Federal chain of custody breach confirmed. Archive preservation in progress. Caldwell stared at the message as though it had spoken his name. What did you bring into my station? He whispered. Maya met his eyes. The truth. 3 seconds. The overhead lights flickered. 1. A mechanical sound rolled through the building. 2. Steel locks engaged inside the front doors. 3. Every exit sealed at once. The red emergency lights came alive, washing the precinct in the color of. Warning. Lieutenant Hayes reached the evidence room door and pulled the handle. Locked. He struck it with his shoulder. Nothing. Daniel backed away from the trash can. Caldwell grabbed Maya by the arm. Turn it off. She looked at his hand, then at his face. You had 90 seconds to verify me. A federal seal appeared on every screen. Below it, a live video feed opened. A gray-haired man in a dark suit stood inside a mobile command vehicle surrounded by agents wearing tactical vests. His voice came through every speaker in the building. Richmond Central Precinct, remain where you are. Caldwell released Maya. The man on the screen looked directly into the camera above her. Special Agent in Charge Brooks, he said, your containment request has been confirmed. Nobody breathed. Maya raised her cuffed wrists. Then send someone with a key. The front doors opened 43 seconds later. Not because Caldwell ordered them to. Because federal agents did. The first team entered in silence, dressed in dark tactical jackets marked with 3 letters that changed the temperature of the room. DOJ. Behind them came Deputy Director Samuel Grant, the gray-haired man from the screen. His eyes moved across the precinct with practiced precision, the discarded badge, the sealed evidence box, Lieutenant Hayes trapped beside the archive door, and Maya Brooks sitting in handcuffs beneath the red lights. Then he looked at Caldwell. Remove those cuffs. Caldwell did not move. Grant's voice hardened. Now. Daniel Reed stepped forward with the key. His hands trembled as he unlocked Maya's wrists. The metal opened with a soft click, but the sound carried through the room like a verdict. Maya stood slowly. She rubbed the red marks around her wrists, then walked toward the trash can. Every officer watched. She reached beneath the crushed coffee cup and lifted her credential case from the garbage. A stain darkened one corner, but the federal seal remained untouched. Grant faced the room. This building is now under federal control pending an investigation into evidence tampering, obstruction of justice, unlawful detention, and conspiracy. Caldwell forced a laugh. This is insane. She came in here pretending to be an agent. Grant turned toward him. She has supervised this investigation for 8 months. The laugh disappeared. Maya opened her credential case and held it at eye level. Special Agent in Charge Maya Brooks, she said. Civil Rights and Public Corruption Division. No one spoke. Caldwell's gaze dropped to her badge, then to the camera above them. For the first time, he seemed to understand that every word had been recorded. But the real shock came from the evidence hallway. Agents opened Hayes's cardboard box. Inside were body camera drives, altered arrest reports, sealed complaint files, and an external hard drive labeled with case numbers that had officially been destroyed. Daniel stared at the contents. Hayes closed his eyes. Caldwell stepped backward. "That box isn't mine." Maya looked at him calmly. "No," she said. "But your fingerprints are on every authorization form inside it." The room shifted. Not physically. Morally. The officers who had laughed now avoided his eyes. Those who had remained silent began to understand that silence had placed them inside the story too. Grant signaled to his team. "Separate them." Agents moved toward Caldwell, Hayes, and Daniel. Daniel suddenly raised both hands. "I'll cooperate," he said. "I know where Sergeant Vale is." Maya's expression sharpened. "Where?" Daniel swallowed. "Alive." And just like that, the investigation stopped being about missing files. It became a race to find the one man who could expose everything. Daniel Reed's confession changed everything. Within minutes, federal agents pulled him into a separate interview room while Maya and Deputy Director Grant stood over a city map spread across the booking desk. "He's being held at an abandoned maintenance facility near the river," Daniel said through the open doorway. "Caldwell told us Vale had become a liability." Maya's eyes hardened. "Who is U.S.?" Daniel looked toward Lieutenant Hayes, then lowered his voice. "Anyone who helped make the complaints disappear." Grant gave the order. 2 federal teams left immediately. No sirens. No flashing lights. Just dark vehicles cutting through the rain toward the industrial district. Back inside the precinct, Caldwell sat alone beneath the same camera that had recorded him throwing Maya's badge away. His uniform remained neat, but the man inside it had begun to unravel. He demanded a lawyer. Then he demanded his phone. Then he claimed every order had come from Hayes. But the documents inside Archive 14B told a different story. Caldwell's signature appeared on evidence transfer forms. His access code opened deleted body camera folders. His bank records showed payments from a private security company connected to 3 false arrests and 2 forced property seizures. The badge had not created his downfall. It had simply stopped him from escaping it. 47 minutes later, Grant's radio came alive. "We found Vale." Maya closed her eyes for half a second. "Condition?" "Alive." "Injured, but conscious." The precinct exhaled as if the building itself had been waiting for those words. Thomas Vale arrived at a federal hospital before noon. From his bed, he identified Caldwell and Hayes as the leaders of a network that had buried complaints, altered reports, and punished officers who refused to cooperate. Daniel accepted a plea agreement in exchange for testimony. Hayes was charged with conspiracy and evidence destruction. Caldwell faced additional charges for unlawful detention, obstruction, civil rights violations, and attempting to destroy federal credentials. Weeks later, the same officers who had watched Maya being handcuffed were called before investigators. Some claimed they had been afraid. Others said they had not understood what was happening. Maya listened without anger. Then she asked each of them the same question. "When did you realize it was wrong?" No answer sounded strong enough. Because justice is not only tested when the truth is revealed. It is tested in the quiet seconds before anyone powerful enters the room. The seconds when one person is humiliated. When witnesses look away. When silence chooses a side. And in Richmond Central Precinct, every camera had preserved that choice. 3 months later, the courtroom was full. Reporters filled the back rows. Former officers sat beside families whose complaints had once disappeared inside Richmond Central Precinct. Some held photographs. Others held copies of reports that had finally been restored. Ethan Caldwell entered without his uniform. No badge. No polished belt. No authority waiting to speak for him. He wore a gray suit and kept his eyes on the floor as federal marshals guided him toward the defense table. Lieutenant Hayes sat beside him, pale and silent. Their lawyers whispered over stacks of evidence, but the room had already seen the truth. Body camera files. Altered signatures. Hidden payments. Recorded threats. And 90 seconds of footage showing Caldwell throw Maya Brooks's federal badge into the trash. Maya sat behind the prosecution team. She had been asked to speak before sentencing, but when the judge called her name, she carried no prepared statement to the podium. She simply faced Caldwell. For a moment, the courtroom became as quiet as the precinct had been when every exit locked. "You believed my badge was the source of my power," Maya said. "That is why you threw it away." Caldwell slowly raised his eyes. "But authority is not power," she continued. "Not when it is used to humiliate. Not when it protects lies. Not when everyone wearing the same uniform becomes afraid to speak." Behind her, Thomas Vale sat with one arm still supported by a brace. Daniel Reed waited beside federal counsel, ready to testify in the remaining cases. Maya looked toward the families in the gallery. "This case was never only about what happened to me. I had a system that responded when my identification disappeared. Others had nothing but their word, and this department taught people not to believe them." A woman in the second row began to cry. Maya's voice softened. "They waited years for doors to open." She turned back toward Caldwell. "Mine locked in 90 seconds. The judge sentenced Caldwell and Hayes under federal corruption and civil rights statutes. Several other officers lost their positions. Richmond Central was placed under independent oversight, and every dismissed complaint from the previous 7 years was reopened. But the deepest change came quietly. New officers were trained to intervene, not observe. Supervisors could no longer erase reports without external review. And above the entrance to the rebuilt evidence wing, a sentence was engraved into the wall: "Silence does not preserve justice. It preserves abuse." On her final visit to the precinct, Maya stood beneath those words with the same credential case in her hand. The stain from the coffee remained. She had chosen not to replace it. Because some scars should not be hidden. They should become evidence. Ethan Caldwell thought he had thrown away a woman's authority. Instead, he exposed his own. He wore a badge to control the room. She carried the truth that locked every door. And when justice finally entered, it did not shout. It simply made sure no one could escape it.